What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It is Will here with the Only Sports Podcast. That's right, the Only Sports Podcast. Last year, around this same time, Super Bowl time, we on our channel did a video titled, "Why Does Everyone Hate This Super Bowl?" That was at the time our most viewed video. So also around that same time, they were having the same discussions about that Super Bowl matchup as they're having about this Super Bowl matchup. So I thought, hey, why not bring it back? So this is Why Does Everyone Hate This Super Bowl Part 2, Eagles Chiefs edition. And without further ado, let's just dive right into the reasons why. I have 4 of them right now. The first and most obvious one is it's a repeat, right? 2 years ago, we saw the Chiefs and Eagles battle it out in a 38-35 game that saw the Chiefs win basically on a holding call at the end of the game. Now, as an Eagles fan, was that ball uncatchable? Had they been calling that penalty, that whole game? Yes, Brad Berry came out and said it was a hold. So, no, I'm not bitter about it. Whatever. They get their chance at redemption a week from today because it recorded this Sunday. So, the first reason is the obvious one, right? It's a repeat. And we think about the first Chiefs Super Bowl. We were coming off just an awful Patriots Rams Super Bowl. Regardless of if you're a fan of defensive football or, you don't like how much like the Eagles Chiefs first matchup where every game is 38-35 and stuff like that. That was let me check the score right now. That was a 13-3 game where there was good defense, but it wasn't like hard hitting defense or, like big old school NFL films. Like this guy gets lit up. This guy gets lit up. It was just smart defensive football that, again, when it's the biggest game of the year, is a little tough to get through. But that 13-3 game, I feel like kind of left a sour taste in everybody's mouth. And then the next year, we get the first Kansas City Chiefs San Francisco 49ers matchup, right? And that one felt fresh. Now, I know the Rams, but any team that was in there with the Patriots, it was still the Patriots, and they always played a different NFC team, right? Besides the 2 times they played the Eagles and the 2 times they played the Giants. But it felt like it was fresh, right? The Rams were fresh, but then you watch that game and you're like, I don't know if I want to see this version of the Rams back in the Super Bowl where they put up 3 points and just have, an abysmal offensive performance with McVay, who's supposed to be, and rightfully, I think, is hailed as like an offensive genius. So then the year after that, you had the Chiefs and the 49ers. Chiefs win their first Super Bowl. Again, that 49ers team was different. It was one of the first years that Shanahan was there, Garoppolo, everything was interesting about that matchup, right? It was can the Chiefs win the big one? Can Andy Reid finally win the big one? All us Eagles fans, I myself I'm obviously an Eagles fan, we were all rooting for Andy Reid to finally win the big one, and he did. And even though that Super Bowl, I feel like, is wildly forgettable outside of it was a 10-point comeback by the Chiefs. Garoppolo could have won it late. He missed the throw, blah, blah, blah. So the next year we get the 31-9 just slacking of the Chiefs from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers led by Brady. And I just rewatched that Super Bowl a couple days ago. And again, Mahomes was doing Mahomes things in that game. He was just pressured so much. That was like prime Kelsey, prime Tyreek Hill. That is one of the craziest Super Bowls you're ever going to see because it's the same exact Chiefs team we have now, but for some reason, just the Buccaneers knew the counter to it. And it feels weird to me that Super Bowl hasn't been studied more. And I know people will come out and be like, oh, well, the Chiefs offensive line was banged up and all that kind of stuff. But you watch that game. Yes, that was an issue, but also the amount of pressure that the Bucks were able to put on Mahomes, even when he was out of the pocket and scrambling, because obviously we see Mahomes now always in the playoffs kind of do that rollout, even against great defenses or good defenses. He does that rollout, picks up extra yardage and stuff like that. They were just containing him in such a way in that Super Bowl that it's just, I wonder if we're going to see that again. Hopefully, as an Eagles fan, we see that a week from now, but I digress. Next up was the Rams Bengals Super Bowl matchup, which was 23-20. I think one of the best Super Bowls we've gotten in the past decade, because again, it was two fresh teams, because even though the Rams had just been there, what, 2 seasons, 3 seasons earlier, this was a new look Rams team. It was just fun to see these two teams. It wasn't the Chiefs, it wasn't the Patriots, it wasn't storied franchises like the 49ers. It was, the Los Angeles Rams, not the St. Louis Rams. And then it was a Cincinnati Bengals team led by a quarterback that everybody still to this day adores, but especially back then, we had the LSU national championship and all that kind of stuff. Then he comes into the NFL, immediately turns the Bengals into a contender, and that was a fun Super Bowl to watch. Then here's where we get the first Chiefs-Eagles matchup, which again, as if I step outside of myself as an Eagles fan and you just go back and look at that Super Bowl objectively, that is a fantastic Super Bowl. It's back and forth. The defense on the Eagles side is pitiful. I mean, every Chiefs touchdown comes with a defender not within 20 yards of the Chiefs player that catches the touchdown. Obviously, Hurts plays maybe up to this point, and still up to this point, the best game he's ever played in his career. Mahomes was Mahomes, Reed was Reed, and it was just a great Super Bowl outside of kind of the deflating ending, and not even deflating as a fan, where that game ended basically on that penalty, on the holding call on Bradbury, but more as a football fan, where it's like this great shootout back and forth ends just kind of on this lame duck penalty that is also one of those penalties where it's like, was the ball catchable? I won't get into it. But then next up is when last year, we had the 25-22 overtime game against the Chiefs and 49ers, which prompted me to make the first video I did last year. And I made that video because everybody hated this matchup because, again, what I'm talking about right now, it was a repeat. But I also feel like there was more to that, where last year it was like everybody was excited to see Ravens Lions as the Super Bowl, right? It was Ravens Chiefs in the AFC Championship, and in the NFC Championship, it was Lions 49ers. And then and again, me and Casino were talking about it on the podcast, where it's like, oh, the Lions and Ravens are going to win, so everybody's going to get, the Super Bowl they want to watch. Will Lamar Jackson finally win his first Super Bowl? Will the Lions finally get to their first Super Bowl and then win it? And then obviously that didn't come into play. It instead went to the Chiefs and 49ers, who I know that game went to overtime, but if you go back and rewatch that game, there's 3.5 quarters of that game that is just a snooze fest, right? The 49ers, very un-49er like, especially in this dominant Kyle Shanahan period they've been in, where they just turn the ball over a ridiculous amount. Like Christian McCaffrey, remember, he fumbles, I think, on that first drive. But yeah, that was a rough game to watch. And then obviously it ends in the OT, where the Niners kick the field goal instead of going for the touchdown. Chiefs go right down the field, score a touchdown. Chiefs are winning it again. And then we have to listen to, Travis Kelce sing badly. So that was fantastic. The second reason why I think people are looking not so fondly at this Eagles-Chiefs rematch, obviously the first one was because it was a rematch, right? It's a repeat. Everybody likes new things, even though we keep being told by the media all the time, oh, no, sports fans actually love dynasties. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure all sports fans like it where their team's never in contention because the same team keeps winning it over. I'm sure most sports fans love that, where there's 31 other teams and there's only one that's not your team that keeps going to the championship. Yeah, just keep telling me that. The second reason is obviously because it's the Chiefs. They're the new dynasty. They're the new evil empire. They're the new bad guys on the block. They're the Patriots, right? What the Patriots were. But again, you throw in the refs, the calls, the games that the Chiefs play, the great quarterbacks they've knocked out of going to Super Bowls, which is, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow, except for that one year. But it's just, the Chiefs are extremely unlikable because of how dominant they are and the way they play games, which is just this, kind of meandering back and forth, and then it's like, oh, they win the game 24-21. Oh, they win on a last second field goal. Oh, there's 27 seconds left, and then they kick a field goal and go to overtime and win. It's like, or 23 seconds left, I'm sorry. But it's just, yeah, it's just a team that's extremely unlikable. I think Travis Kelce is really, unless you're like a Taylor Swift fan, I do think he's getting to the point where he's unsufferable, or I don't even know if that's the right word, but just like, when you watch him, it's a next level of cringe where you're kind of just like, why is this guy, at the Super Bowl, he's singing on the stage and everybody's kind of just like watching it. And you're just like, okay, this is like that big frat guy energy where you're just like, I'm embarrassed for him, but for some reason his girlfriend really likes it, even though in that moment she didn't like it. But yeah, it's just cringe is maybe the best word. And then, like the whole Chiefs kingdom, the Chiefs fans, the Chiefs analyst on TV, where it's just like, okay, well, now the Chiefs are just the best team ever. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback ever. And now they're going for a three-peat. And it's just like, I don't know. It's just the Chiefs just leave a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And again, I feel like the first half of the Patriots dynasty, they were borderline what the Chiefs are now, which is hateable. But the second half of the Patriots dynasty, I feel like it was more fun, because they were playing, again, different likable teams, different teams people were rooting for, and they were losing half of the Super Bowls they were playing, right? So they lose to the Giants twice, they lose to the Eagles. That first Giants one, the storyline going into that game was, oh, they're undefeated and going against this underdog, wild card team, blah, blah, blah. The story of that was captivating, right? And everybody was watching that game. Everybody was watching the Sunday night football game where it was Giants Patriots the first time, and they were like in that shootout where the Patriots won it kind of in the last couple minutes of that game. But there was something that there was something intriguing about it, because it was like, it's not a guarantee they win. And then especially the first time they lose to the Giants and they play them again, it's like, is this where the Giants do what they did the first time? Do the Patriots get their revenge? All that kind of stuff. And then even as an Eagles fan, I think even non-Eagles fans can appreciate how special the 2017 Eagles team was, where it was Carson Wentz, probably going to be the MVP of the league, this rookie quarterback in his second or third year, lighting up the league, doing all these crazy things where there's 10 guys on him and he pops out the middle, runs for a first down, doing all this kind of stuff. Has a great game, shootout with the Rams, gets knocked out injured, is going to be out. And then journeyman quarterback who had one good season with the Eagles comes back as a, backup. He ends up starting the rest of it. Rest is history, Philly special, all that kind of stuff. Shootout. So it was with the Patriots dynasty. The difference from the Chiefs dynasty is that the Patriots were kind of unpredictable, right? They had that Falcons game in there. They had that Seahawks game in there where it was just, they were losing, or they were having these games that just came down to like, oh my God, plays, right? The Chiefs aren't as fun as that, aren't as interesting as that, which doesn't make sense because they're the fun offensive team that, when you're watching the Super Bowl, it's like, oh, they're just kind of steadily going down the field. And then they do this pass to the outside, he falls to the end zone, and like they win an OT. And then at the Eagles one, it's like, oh, this guy got a holding call, and then they win because they just run out the clock. And it's kind of just like, it doesn't have the same pizzazz. It doesn't have the same spark that the Patriots dynasty did, where it's like, they're going to win or lose, or they're going to at least give you a good game, outside of the outlier, obviously being that Rams game. But there was a reason that was the last one. Let's go next up, which is the reason that I find the funniest, which is Eagles fans, right? So there's been the whole thing since the Commanders game where it was like, oh, this here's a video every day of a Commanders fan being like picked on for being a Commanders fan at the Eagles game. Now, again, I think it's overblown. If there's 32 teams, one fan base has to be the worst fan base in terms of fan interactions, just logically, right? They're not all going to be great. And if it is the Eagles, which most people think it is, I don't have enough knowledge. I've been to one live sports games in my life, and it was not in Philadelphia. It was with mostly Philadelphia fans at SoFi Stadium when they played the Rams a season or two ago. And I didn't see any fights. There was no like Rams fans or Eagles fans getting into it. So I have no insider knowledge of it, right? I have no way to be like, yeah, everybody's right, because I've never been to an Eagles game at Eagles Stadium. But from the consensus, it is widely regarded as the worst fan base, which again, they're the Eagles fans' mottos, who I am one, is no one likes us, we don't care, which I kind of am attuned to. Like, I like that. I like that mindset. Like, we're trying to win a football game. We're fan is short for fanatic. Like, yeah, I care if my team wins or loses. And again, I've already seen the thing where it's like people say there's bad apples, but this is you spoiled the whole orchard thing. And it's just like, yeah, I'm sure when you mix an aggressive sport like football with the worst fan base, allegedly, and then alcohol, like, what, you just think everybody's going to be screaming or like singing kumbaya around a campfire? Like, no. Like, you go into the place knowing it's aggressive, like the Packers fan, right, who was like ended up being shown as like a grifter or whatever. You go into the belly of the beast knowing what they're like, and then if you antagonize them and only show the end of the video where it's like, this guy's yelling at us, it's just like, yeah, but you knew what it was going in. So it's weird to do this whole thing where it's like Eagles fans are the worst and they're really aggressive with the opposing fans. So anyways, I dressed up as the opposing fan and went to the game and antagonized them. And it's just like, yeah, but you knew that going in what they would be. Now, I'm not excusing, obviously, I've seen some videos where it's like guys running up and ripping, fans' hats and scarves on and like throwing them and stuff like that. Obviously, when you start touching another person, especially in an aggressive manner, that's where you have to draw the line and be like, yeah, that's fucked up. But again, it's fucked up if it was any fan base. It just happens to be the Eagles one. I'm sure, Raiders, 49ers fans have also gotten that kind of stigma. So I just think it's sport. It's one of the most aggressive sports in the world outside of like UFC and boxing. But even boxing, I don't feel like it's like that aggressive as their fans do, for football. So Eagles fans, you still have to put them on the list because most of the hate, I won't even say most of, I'll say half the hate is warranted, right? So, and then the last reason, again, is the refs. Now, I've gotten into arguments with other people in our own comments, right? Our own videos where people have just commented and been like, it's as disingenuous for me to sit here, for Casino to sit here and say the Chiefs win all their games because of the refs and the calls they get. That's not true. The second you say all, or the second you even say like most, you're wrong, right? Like just in pretty much any argument, right? That's why when it comes to Eagles fans, when you say all or most, you're wrong, because again, there's a couple tens of thousands of people at these games, and you're seeing incidents where it's like 2 or 3 people. So that means one out of every 2 or 3,000 people is bad. Like, yeah, that pretty much lines up with society. I mean, if we want to put it like that. But when it comes to the refs and the calls and the controversies, no, the Chiefs do not get all the calls. No, the Chiefs do not win games because of all the calls they get. But yes, they win some games because of the calls they get, right? Yes, games have been decided by the referees helping the Chiefs, whichever way you want to look at it. But it's disingenuous to be on one side and be like, they never get any calls like that help them win games. They're just playing good football. Like, no, that's not true. But it's also not true to be like they only win games because they get calls and the referees. So there's a fine middle ground where it's like, hey, they don't get all the calls, but they sure do seem to get a lot of the ones that are really crucial or 50-50 or up for, debate. They seem to be on the receiving end of the benefit of those a lot more than that hurts them, right? And I think that's where, as we've said in a video we released a couple days ago, that's what the issue is. The issue is they get almost, if not all, the 50-50 calls. And I know I just said it's not, you can't say all because you're losing the argument. But when it comes to the 50-50 calls, just logic dictates that it should be 50-50. And I think if you just put all those in a row, you would show that the Chiefs get all, if not most, if not the vast majority of the 50-50 calls, which logically doesn't even make sense. So that's one of the big issues. And yeah, I mean, I think that's really the four reasons. And then you could throw like a fifth little reason in here, which is the Taylor Swift of it all, which I know Casino is a big proponent of. I don't really care. Like, I don't get what the difference is between where it's like, let's show Taylor Swift in the skybox, like celebrating a touchdown, or let's show the old owner and his wife in the press box, like celebrating. Like, let's show a random celebrity here who comes to the game. Like, it doesn't, again, it's on screen for 2 seconds and people like lose their shit about it, where they're just like, oh my God, I saw her for 2 seconds. And it's just like, yeah, the NFL made $300 million with her being now a part of like the NFL lexicon and at these games or whatever. What, you should be lucky they just don't have a tiny camera of her during the entire game, just in the bottom corner where it's like, here she is, Taylor Swift, and it's just endless with her. So we should be lucky we get the, and it's been less and less over the years where it's like, let's cut to her for 3 seconds. She's celebrating. She's talking to Caitlin Clark and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I feel like that's a disingenuous argument. Even if you like Taylor, or even if you hate Taylor Swift or hate whoever, it's like they're on your screen for less than a minute at a time over the span of 4 hours. Like, get over it. So we have that it's a repeat, that it's the Chiefs, that it's Eagles fans, that it's the refs, and then Taylor Swift. So I think the consensus is that unlike last year where it was, oh, we could have gotten a Ravens-Lions Super Bowl, I don't think the Commanders-Bills had that much of a pop to go off that. If it would have, I do think, however, if it was Bills Eagles, especially after they had that great game, last season or the season before, I think it was like 34-31 in OT. I think if it was Eagles Bills, this would be one of the most anticipated Super Bowls we're going to see, because again, it would be, can Hurts win after losing his first one? Sirianni, can he finally like silence the doubters and all that kind of stuff? And then on the flip side, obviously it would be like Josh Allen finally beat Mahomes, finally got to the big game. The Bills are 0-4 in the Super Bowl. Can they win their first one? Much like last year, where it was like, can Lamar Jackson, now that he's here, finally win a Super Bowl? The Detroit Lions are getting to their first Super Bowl ever. Can they win it? So I think there is more intriguing storylines. Now, obviously, with the Eagles this year, unlike last year where it was, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, like all this kind of stuff. This year, it's obviously the Saquon Barkley of it all. It's the rookies on the Eagles defense. It's, can they win one final one for Brandon Graham? Can Hurts finally win a Super Bowl after, going to one and then being so close in the playoffs, for every year he's basically been a starter. It'll be interesting to see. It definitely will be. I'm looking forward to the Super Bowl, obviously, because my team's in it. And I think with the last game these two played being 38-35 with a defense that was shaky all year, that most people knew was a fraud, right? Going into that Super Bowl, all the weird stuff with the sod father and all that kind of stuff. So now this year it's number one defense. Chiefs have looked vulnerable all year, even though they haven't, it hasn't affected their winning of games. And then you have Hurts kind of turning it on in the playoffs. And then obviously Saquon Barkley having potentially with 42 yards or something like that in the Super Bowl, the best season by a running back in NFL history. I do think this is going to be a good Super Bowl, and we'll see what happens, but I like the Eagles' chances this year a hell of a lot more than I did in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So this is Will. Let me know why you are not interested in the Super Bowl down below. Casino and I will be back on Tuesday with an episode where we just talk about, shockingly, the Super Bowl. So adios. Have a good night.